All right, folks, over the weekend, a lot of people were angry when the word came out that Joy Reid, her primetime show on MSNBC, had been canceled. I found out on Saturday, and then MSNBC would not confirm that, but then Variety and the New York Times dropped some stories that that night that confirmed what was going on. She's hosted that particular show for 5 years, and prior to that, she had a weekend show on MSNBC, as well before that, a daytime daily show, and before that, a weekend show. So this was actually the fourth show that Joy Reid has had at MSNBC. And so there have been a number of people who have been expressing lots of outrage as a result of this decision. Last night, there were a number of people at one point that about 10,000, this was the Win with Black Women and the Win with Black Men Zoom. At one point, they had about 10,000 people who were on the Zoom and about 14,000 people who were live on YouTube. And so what MSNBC has apparently decided, they're going to move the weekend show that features Michael Steele, Simone Sanders, and Alicia Menendez. They're going to move that show to the 7 p.m. slot that Joy currently occupies. She's doing her last show right now, announcing what she's going to be doing next. And so that's happening as we speak. So that's with their decision. Also, the New York Post reported that they were ending several other shows, but they were, like, for instance, Jonathan Capehart, as well as a couple of others, but they're going to be moving them to other shows. So there's a whole realignment with their programming strategy. Rebecca Kutler, I worked with her at CNN several years ago. That's a whole other story. She became the president of MSNBC when Rashida Jones announced that she was stepping down. And so Kutler has been remaking the network, in her own image. Now, also understand there's also upheaval happening at MSNBC because Comcast announced that they were creating a separately publicly traded company called SpinCo. And what SpinCo is Comcast is moving these various networks into a separate business. Let me pull that press release up. And this also is the heart of this. So under this, MSNBC and NBC were under the Comcast umbrella when they purchased NBC Universal. But now, go to my iPad, Henry. So Comcast announced on November 20th, they were creating this separate business. And so what they were doing, they're putting, they're putting USA Network, CNBC, MSNBC, Oxygen, the E! Network, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel, along with their other digital assets such as Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes, Golf Now, and Sports Engine, through a separate publicly traded company called SpinCo. Mark Lazarus was going to be the CEO of that company. They're going to keep NBC under Comcast. And so now you're having these separate companies. You've had Elon Musk float the idea that when they become public, he may buy that company. So all these things are being thrown out. So keep in mind, when you talk about changes over the years, you've had other folks who've had shows. You've had other black women who've had shows on MSNBC. Shows got canceled. Tiffany Cross had a weekend show that was canceled in December 2023. Karen Finney had a weekend show. Melissa Harris Perry had a falling out with the network where she did not want to cover Trump rallies. She said she wanted her show back. They said, no, you have to cover it. She ends up leaving the network. And then when that happened, Joy Reid, who had a weekday show, then took over her weekend slot before she took over, got the primetime show. And so all these things are going on. And you see the decisions of how these mainstream networks operate. Now, you also have these networks who are getting rid of folk because they've been highly critical of Donald Trump. You look at Jim Acosta over at CNN. They chose to replace him at 10 a.m. and offer him a midnight show, which he obviously declined. So he has since left the company, and he has his own show on Substack. Again, Joy is announcing right on her show what she's going to be doing next. And so I don't know if it's a podcast, if it's a daily show, if it's something on Patreon. Linktree on Substack. No idea about that. But you have a lot of her supporters who are very upset with this decision because they say it is the silencing of strong black voices, the silencing of strong female voices. And so what is being happening is her supporters, give me 1 second, I'm going to show you this here. They actually were encouraging people. They were encouraging people to support her show tonight so it can end with very high numbers. Now, this here is a graphic that they've been distributing. It says, turn the TV off and turn on black media. We won't let media conglomerates determine who tells our stories. We need 15 million people. Tune in for Joy's final show, then turn the TV off. And then they had this other graphic. We need Joy. MSNBC is silencing black voices. We're not letting this go. Call MSNBC at 212-664-4444 and demand they stop erasing black voices from political media. So that is happening. And the thing that we have to understand is that the reality is when you talk about these shows, when you talk about on these networks, the African Americans who have these shows, they don't own the shows. The network does. And the reality is the network decides who they want on for a variety of reasons. And so it's understanding what is going on. It's understanding how the world is changing. It's understanding how these folks are making decisions. And the reality is this, and y'all have heard me say this for a very, very long time. If you do not own it, you only have what we could call leverage and influence. Owners have power. You heard me tell this story before. When Michael Jordan played in the NBA, Michael Jordan, folks talked about how he was the most powerful basketball player in the NBA. And they were actually wrong. Michael Jordan had the most leverage. Michael Jordan had the most influence because Michael Jordan could put butts in the seats. So Michael Jordan, when he decided to become president of basketball operations for the Washington Wizards, he was still flexing his power and influence. Then Michael decided to come back and play for 2 seasons. And here's what happened. After Michael played his second season, Michael then chose to retire. And when Michael retired, Michael went to meet with Abe Pollin, the owner, with Ted Leonis, one of the minority owners, to get his job back. And while sitting with Ted Leonis, Ted Leonis said, "Oh, Michael, we're going to go in a different direction." And see, Ted Leonis privately, secretly, silently was bothered by some things that Michael Jordan had done, how he had treated some staff there, okay? So Pollin says, "Michael, here's a $10 million check. Thank you for your services." Michael was stunned. Michael looked at Ted Leonis like, what the hell is going on? Ted Leonis had no idea either. Abe Pollin fired Michael Jordan. See, Michael Jordan didn't have power because he didn't own it. He had leverage and influence. And Michael stormed out of the meeting, $10 million check sitting on the table, got in his Jaguar and drove off. So when you see that photo of Michael Jordan behind the wheel of his Jaguar, top down, he was leaving the parking lot. Later, Michael Jordan tried to buy the Milwaukee Bucks. He was rebuffed. He later ended up buying the Charlotte Hornets from Bob Johnson. When Michael Jordan did that, he was the majority owner. Then Michael had power. What am I saying? What I'm saying is when we talk about these shows, whether they are on CNN or MSNBC, whether they are on any of these networks, in fact, whether somebody has a show on my network, the reality is they may have leverage, they may have influence, but they actually don't have power because they don't own it. When you own it, you decide who's on and who's not. You decide how much they get paid, you decide what they do. And so we are here where we are because Frederick Douglass owned the North Star, because Robert Abbott owned the Chicago Defender, because the owners of the Pittsburgh Courier, the owners of Ebony, Jet was John H. Johnson. Earl Graves owned Black Enterprise. Ed Lewis and others owned Essence Magazine. I can go on and on and on. What we have to recognize is that it's important to have black voices in mainstream media. But the fact of the matter is, mainstream media, mainstream white media, largely led by white executives, are going to make decisions that they want to make. And so what we can never do, while I absolutely support brothers and sisters and have fought for them to get mainstream jobs, what we can never do is allow black-owned media to die and perish. Because if that happens, then there is no place for us to have the unadulterated, the unfiltered truth when it comes to our issues. We must recognize that when we talk about black-owned media, it also means hiring people behind the scenes, hiring people who are editors and directors and videographers and video playback and associate producers and production assistants and on and on and on. This should be a wake-up call to every brother and sister that those jobs are temporary. They're short-term. And it happens at black-owned media. We're sitting here because TV One, Alfred Liggins, the owner, the CEO of Urban One, decided to cancel News One Now. And when Alfred Liggins sat me in his office in December, I think it was December 2nd, 2017, or December 9th, I can't remember, to tell me the show was being canceled, did I flinch? Nope. Did I cry? Nope. Was there a punch to the gut? Nope. Literally, as Alfred Liggins was telling me the reasons why he was canceling News One Now after 4 years. And before that, I had Washington Watch for 4 years. As he was talking, I was planning. As he was talking, I was plotting. We walked out of that meeting. I was sitting, D'Angela Proctor, went to high school with her. She was a senior executive at TV One. She was sitting next to me, and we went to her office, and she was like, I'm stunned. Now, I remember I was looking at her wall, and she was sitting there, and she's like, how are you feeling? I said, oh, I'm fine, I'm planning. Because, see, the day I walked in the TV One, I knew there was an expiration date. The day I sat in the lobby at CNN in 2007 and said, God, if this is for me, let your will be done, I knew there was an expiration date. So I want all of us to understand that we should be rightfully upset when one of our favorite voices is no longer on one of those mainstream platforms. But we must remember that that day could come for any one of the folks. Lester Holt announced today that he was stepping down as the anchor of the NBC Evening News and going to commit himself to just doing Dateline. Other shows hosts have left. And I had people tell me, they said, and I'll never forget, I had a group I was working with, all black. They said, well, we're no longer going to work with you because, this is a true story, I got the letter, because your media profile is diminished. Now, first of all, I had already decided to fire them because they were not productive. And I said, I'm sorry, diminished? See, what happened was they felt my media profile was diminished because I was no longer at CNN when in April 2013 I left after they did not sign me to a new contract. And I said, diminished. We had just announced I was going to get a syndicated radio show, a daily morning show on TV One, and I signed a new deal with Time Journal Morning Show, but my media presence was diminished. Here's what they were really saying. You're no longer on white media like CNN, so we don't want to represent you. These were black people. But see, I'd already fired them because they had not done what they should have done. And see, the interesting thing is that too many of us operate by white validation. Too many of us believe that white-owned media is better than black-owned media. And the problem always comes up where we think that is better. We think it's a bigger check, it's a better vehicle. And let me be real clear. I'm not specifically talking about anybody in particular. I'm telling you a state of mind that exists among black people. And so the funny thing is, the folk who said that my media presence was being diminished because I wasn't on CNN didn't realize that I've been gone for 12 years. I actually make more today than I was making from CNN. We actually have done more. See, what we should never do is believe that their ice is colder. We should never believe that our being is tied up in having that company at the end of our name. 2013, when I accepted the NABJ Journalist of the Year award in Orlando, this is exactly what I said to everybody in that ballroom. I said, too many of you are enamored with the largeness of the letters on your business card. I said, you work for big media companies, but you have small opportunities. I said, you see, when I have sat at the table in front of the President of the United States, I was sitting there because I was an anchor at TV One. But there were black folks who were at NBC and CBS and ABC who had big jobs, but because they were not main anchors, they were not invited to the meeting at the White House. And I said to that audience, I would rather have a big opportunity at a smaller company than have a small opportunity at a big company. Do y'all realize that when we launched News One Now in November of 2013, I could not get an associate producer or a line producer at a major network to apply for my executive producer job at TV One because they said that was a lesser network. Here were folk who weren't even the executive producer, but they were so enamored with those call letters, NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, MSNBC, CNN. They were enamored with those call letters. What I'm trying to get us to understand here is that folks should be upset that Joy Reid's voice will not be seen every night on MSNBC. They should be upset that they're not going to be able to see the different voices that she brought onto her show. They should be. But let me be perfectly clear. Joy Reid's name does not have to have MSNBC host at the end for her to be effective. Joy Reid does not have to have a primetime host on MSNBC to be relevant. What we have to understand is that we still can do amazing work away from those mainstream outlets. We can actually build up our own and create sustaining organizations and not bow down to corporate overlords. Because here's the reality, folks, and I get asked this all the time. I remember I was going after one particular company, and there was somebody with that particular company. They hit an agency that I work with, and they said, we think he is just going too hard against us. Who can we call? And the brother said, what are you talking about? There's nobody you can call because Roland doesn't have a boss. There's nobody over him who you can call. He owns his show and his company 100%. I had to explain to them that if you're upset with my commentary, that's your problem. Because on the corporate hierarchy here at the Black Star Network, the only person above me is God. And the only person who can cancel me is God. Not Rebecca Kutler, not Mark Lazarus, not MSNBC. And so that's what I would say to Joy Reid, to Tiffany Cross, to anybody else. When we become owners, when we control our voice and control our destiny, and we do what Freedom's Journal says, and we have it on our wall, what they wrote on March 16, 1827, the nation's first black newspaper. They wrote, we wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. That has been the mantra of the black press since March 16, 1827. And so the message to Joy Reid and to every black person who's been laid off and let go from a mainstream media organization, let me be abundantly clear. Your life is not over. Your voice is not silenced. You can have an impact and you can affect and effect this world, and you can infect folk with the truth, and you don't have to answer to a Rebecca or a Mark. All you have to do is have faith in yourself and rise above that moment and understand that that job is now in your rearview mirror, and there is an open road ahead, and you can choose to do whatever you want to do on that open road and truly say what you always wanted to say, because no longer do they get to tell you what you can and cannot discuss. I'm gonna go to my panel. Julianne, you first.
Oh, Roland, thank you for that encouragement for our people who are being laid off. Joy Reid, we miss her, we will miss her, but she, like you said, she has a voice, she has a brand, just like you did when you stepped out and did the Black Star Network. She has a voice, she has a brand, and she needs to leverage it. I was on the call last evening. There were tens of thousands of us on the call. Then what we're really talking about is taking stuff back. This 47 moment of this person who pretends to be the president of the United States, and because Democrats don't play as dirty as other people do, so we accept the results, even though we believe they're flawed. 4 million people basically voter suppressed. Had they been able to vote, what would have happened? But let's just say this is a moment for two things. One, for black people to start working together. Too many of us have failed to. So now it's a coming together time. But the other thing, the other time it is a time for us to look at the strength of our organizations, the strength of what we have. I'm looking at Woodrow Wilson. I'm looking at Ronald Reagan. I'm looking at evil devils who have been presidents before. And I'm saying we survived it. We will survive.
Derek?
Yeah, I appreciate your words of encouragement as well, Roland. You're spot on. But I just want to be abundantly clear, because all day today, a lot of us was on that same call that you referenced. We were one of the 10,000, and people were talking about, well, because her Nielsen ratings and she didn't get the awards. And I keep telling folks, no, you go to the Nielsen ratings and you see her brand alone. Every time she went from one day or time slot, Joy Reid delivered. Her Nielsen ratings speak for itself. She gets so many awards. She just got an award, an Image Award. And so I tell folks, stop pushing somebody else's narrative. This was strictly about power and control. And Roland, you're spot on. We don't need somebody else to validate us.
Absolutely. John Quill.
And my soror, Joy Reid, this particular season in your life is meant for you to use your God-given gifts, which is to be a voice, right? A voice that speaks up for our communities, for our peoples, a voice that speaks up against injustices, that calls out people in many of the same ways as Roland Martin does. But the difference is that now you have the opportunity to use your platform and your ability to impact millions of people by the means of ownership, and frankly, by any way that you want to. And so, I'll leave with this is that, when you're able to use your God-given gifts and you have the opportunity and the ability and the means to make a broader impact on your own terms, that is the way to go. And Roland Martin is 100% correct in ownership. that is the best thing that you can do with what you have and your gifts that you have. Whatever opportunities that you choose next, I know that they will be fantastic. And just know that we are all here supporting you and to keep fighting the good fight because we need you.
Folks, I want to play this because I think some folk need to be reminded of what happens when you step out on faith and when you don't worry about what other folk have to say. And this was 2019, Tyler Perry getting his BET award. Listen to this, please.
Sit down. I couldn't help but think about my mother. I remember being a kid, about 5 years old. She would take me into the projects with her when she played cards on Friday nights with a bunch of women. Now, these women didn't have more than a 12th grade education, but they were smart black women. They were powerful black women. They had great stories to tell. And I was a 5-year-old kid sitting there on the floor playing with my Matchbox cars, listening to them talk about their men, their relationships, and their pains. And when one of them would get really sad, another woman would come in and make a joke and they'd all start laughing. I didn't know I was in a master class for my life. I would get home and my father would be beating my mother and doing all kinds of things and saying all kinds of stuff to her, and he would leave the room and I'd walk in and I'd imitate one of those women and she would start laughing. There was a power in that I didn't really get until I got older. I remember being about 11, 12 years old on my way to my new school, and I got to this intersection. I had to walk past pimps, prostitutes, literally walk through a graveyard, get to this intersection, 6-lane intersection, and there was a man standing there saying, "Will someone help me cross? Will someone help me cross?" And there were all of these people that kept passing by him and passing by him. I said, "I'll help you cross." So he told me he was going to my school and he was gonna sell candy there. That's how he made his living. So I helped him cross the street to get there. We became good friends. His name was Mr. Butler. That moment reminded me of my mother, bringing her out of pain into laughter to help her cross. My first 10 movies were all about her subconsciously, wanting her to know that she was worthy, wanting black women to know you're worthy, you're special, you're powerful, you're amazing. All of that was about helping her cross. When I started hiring people like Taraji and Viola Davis and Idris Elba, they couldn't get jobs in this town, but God blessed me to be in a position to be able to hire them. I was trying to help somebody cross. When I built my studio, I built it in a neighborhood that is one of the poorest black neighborhoods in Atlanta, so the young black kids can see that a black man did that and they can do it too. I was trying to help somebody cross. The studio was once a Confederate Army base, and I want you to hear this, which meant that there was Confederate soldiers on that base plotting and planning on how to keep 3.9 million Negroes enslaved. Now that land is owned by one Negro. It's all about trying to help somebody cross. While everybody was fighting for a seat at the table, talking about Oscar so white, I said, y'all go ahead and do that. But while you fighting for a seat at the table, I'll be down in Atlanta building my own. Because what I know for sure is that if I could just build this table, God would prepare it for me in the presence of my enemies. Rather than being an icon, I want to be an inspiration. So thank you, BET, my new family. Thank you, everybody. I want you to hear this. Every dreamer in this room, there are people whose lives are tied into your dream. Own your stuff. Own your business. Own your way. God bless you. Thank you, BET. Thank you, Scott. I love you guys. Thank you.
That was important to play because I think sometimes folk have to be reminded that you don't have to seek permission. Tyler and I had a conversation after that, and one of the things that he told me, he said, Roland, if you think about every major black person in Hollywood, he said, I have offered to them to come to be able to sit down and I'll lay out what I've done, how I built this. He said the only person who took him up on his offer was Kevin Hart. Since the conversation, Nate Parker did, 50 Cent did. But the reality is they weren't interested. I need people to understand who's watching. It's just not just applied to media. This applies to our earlier conversation. It applies to politics. It applies to economics. It applies to entrepreneurship. It applies to social justice. It applies to how do we transform our communities. There are a lot of people in our community who have conversations about what we need to do to change. There are a lot of people who are excellent at talking. They are excellent at identifying the problem. They are excellent at saying, man, we should be doing this. Man, we should be doing that. Man, we should be doing this. Man, we should be doing. They are excellent at all of that. Rarely do we ever ask, so why haven't you done it? I need folk to understand that when we started this show, black folk told me that shit ain't gonna work. Black folk told me, man, what you doing? That you can't do that. I remember YouTube. Remember YouTube people, they were actually funding projects. Literally said black news can't work. When we launched this show, we launched with 157,000 subscribers on September 4th, 2018. That's what we launched with. How many of y'all remember this social media post when we hit 500,000? How many of y'all remember that particular post? How many of y'all remember when we posted this? How many of y'all remembered when we posted this? How many of y'all remembered when we posted this? How many of y'all remembered when we posted the next number and we kept going and we kept climbing when we posted this? How many of y'all remember that? How many of y'all remember when the folk who said, man, y'all ain't doing nothing, it ain't gonna involve nothing, and we said, okay, cool, we good. We good. Y'all folks said, you this and you that, and you boule and you bougie, you this, and I'm like, okay, cool. What we did was what Nehemiah said, just keep one hand on your weapon and the other hand building. We ain't worried about the haters. We didn't care what the haters had to say. We didn't care about nothing they had to say, because all they did was just talk. We kept building. Y'all remember this one right here, huh? We hit that earlier this year. But just so you understand, right now, we've got 1,658,869 subscribers on our YouTube channel. In the last 28 days, we've had 32.5 million views. This is just on YouTube. In the last 28 days, 85,000 new subscribers. In the last 28 days, the watch time, 6.7 million hours of watch time. But 6 years and 4 months ago, folks said that ain't gonna work. Launched it with one advertiser, asked me, and $350,000 of my own money. I'm saying that because the message to anybody out there in media, Tom Joyner and I talked about this beforehand as well. If you take care of the community is gonna take care of you.
That's all right.
34,000 people have donated to this show. And I've had people come to me, they ask me to stream stuff, they ask me to cover stuff. Hey man, can you come out? And they talk about, brother, I'm praying for you. I mean, I'm praying for your health. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for that. And man, we gotta support black-owned media. Man, we really need that. We gotta keep that thing going. So then I called my man Keenan, who handles our digital operations. I said, Keenan, can you check the roll to see if their name is mentioned? Keenan, can you check the roll to see if they donated. And 99.9% of the time, Keenan will hit me and be like, I don't see their name. Folk who will stand there and talk about, oh man, we gotta have this. It's amazing. We never see their name because they never gave. Now again, they want me to cover their stuff. They want me to show up. They want us to do this, but they ain't contributed nothing. They ain't done nothing. They ain't done any of that. And remember when I told y'all? Remember when I told y'all? When I told y'all why we need modern day Nehemiahs? And when I told y'all that history will always remember the folk who stood with you, not the folk like in Nehemiah who was on the outside the gate saying y'all can't do it. They gonna remember the builders. And if y'all think I'm lying, all you gotta do is when you go to Nehemiah chapter 3, it says it right here. This gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassaniah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Then it says, Miramoth, son of Uriah, repaired the next section. And this Unithan repaired for the next section. And it says the next section. And it says the Deshana gate was repaired by, boom. They laid its beams and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. You read Nehemiah 3 and 4, it's going to tell you they name all of the people who helped rebuild the wall. So I hope y'all now understand why every Friday we run the names of the people. Control room, get it ready. We run the names of the people who gave 10,000, 5,000, 1,000, 500, 250, 200, 100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, 1. They are the people who can take credit for helping build the Black Star Network. And when we as Black people take full accountability and are willing to put our money where our mouth is, if we are willing to actually engage in the action, there's nothing that we cannot build. And I can tell you right now, we can build a network as big as CNN, bigger than MSNBC, bigger than what's out here. We've got to first have the faith in God to do it. Second, the faith in ourselves. And thirdly, we got to be willing to do the work to build. So let me thank John Quell. Let me thank Derek. Let me thank Julian for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate the folks who are on our panel every single night who make this possible. But I also want the folk watching to understand we can do it. Joy can do it. Tiffany can do it. Angela Rye can do it. We can all do it. And what also has to happen is folk also work together in concert to actually make it happen. Your support is critical to our success. So if you want to allow us to do what we do, contribute to our Bring the Funk fan club. We make it real simple. The target goal is to get 20,000 people contributing on average $50 each a year. It's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. You can do that by utilizing the Stripe QR code. Cash App cancel our accounts because we are an Inc., but you have to be an LLC. So if you want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. It's right there. Click the Cash App button to continue to contribute. You can send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. It's paypal.me/R Martin Unfiltered. Put that in your signature, in your signature line in Google. Venmo is venmo.com/RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you want to get my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, when you buy that book, that money is vested back into the show. Bookstores, you can get it, or also get the audio version on Audible. When you get our merchandise, the money from merchandise goes back into the show. And so go to RolandMartin.creator-spring.com for the actual merchandise as well. And download our Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Tell your friends and family to subscribe to our channel. We want to hit 2 million subscribers. So just go to youtube.com/Roland S. Martin, click subscribe. That's all they got to do. And so that's what, because we launched a new show with Jameer Burley and Bria Baker. I want to launch 3 other shows this year. And this is what it's all about. Not having to ask somebody for permission to talk about what our concerns are. So that's what we're actually trying to do. All y'all YouTube folks, it's 8,000 of y'all. Hit that like button. When you hit the like button, y'all, that impacts the algorithm. So right now, we got 3,600 likes. How do we have 8,000 people watching live right now and we don't have 8,000 likes? Now, I know some haters in there. We should easily have 6,000 or 7,000 likes. So y'all should be hitting that like button before I sign off. Now, I put this commercial together because here's the deal. I don't know what Joy's next thing is. I don't know if she's launching a daily show. I don't know. I'll get that update. But here's the deal. We put this together for the folk who, if you watch her show every night, guess what? Want to turn MSNBC off? And you know what? We here every single night. Roll it.
But we begin tonight with the people who are really running the country right now.
Now, Trump is often wrong and misleading about a lot of things, but especially about history.
Donald Trump falling in line with President Elon Musk.
In the wake of the unsettling news that MSNBC has canceled Joy Reid's primetime show, The Readout, Roland Martin and the Black Star Network would like to extend an invitation to all of the fans of Joy Reid's MSNBC show to join us every night to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming on the Black Star Network for news, discussion of the issues that matter to you, and the latest updates on the twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump and his unprecedented assault on democracy, as well as co-president Elon Musk's takeover of the federal government. The Black Star Network stands with Joy Reid and all folks who understand the power of black voices in media. We must come together and never forget that information is power. Be sure to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered weeknights, 6 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Roland S. Martin or download the Black Star Network app. Folks, this is all about us building, building, building.